أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. For the majority of the Safed Ansar present here today, so that is the Ansar between the ages of 40 and 55, most have spent a large part of their youth proclaiming that they would sacrifice their life, wealth, time and honor for the sake of their religion, country and nation. However, some may have it that such a pledge no longer fully applies after the age of 40. This would suggest that all the passion and drive to serve suddenly switches off at the flick of a switch in one's body when the clock strikes midnight on December 31st after the age of 40. The truth of the matter is that the pledge most of us have performed for the better part of our lives prepared us for the pledge we give now, that I shall try my utmost for the remainder of my life to spread and strengthen Islam Ahmadiyyat and defend the institution of Khilafat, to also be prepared to offer the greatest sacrifice for this cause, and to encourage one's children to always remain dedicated and devoted to Khilafat. This promise is recited by Ahmadi men over the age of 40 on a regular basis at all Ansar meetings and events. And it should be interesting to note that though we all attend Jamaat organized meetings and events, at no stage are we asked to recite a pledge. And so it is apparent that the pledge is solely reserved for the auxiliary arms of the Jamaat. So those members that do not attend Ansar events on a regular basis are depriving themselves unnecessarily from a fundamental promise and commitment that we have been making since we joined Atfalul Ahmadiyya at the age of 7. From this young age, a pledge has been a regular and essential part of who we are for most of our lives. Why would an Ahmadi choose to stop making such a pledge? Hazrat Muslim Maud Razillah Ta'ala Anhu gave a sermon almost exactly 75 years ago, on Friday, 22nd October 1943, in which Huzur spoke about the purpose of Majlis Ansarullah and the responsibility of its members. In this sermon, Huzur said, "This is a manifestation of God's power, that a time comes over man that his physical powers grow while his intellectual powers are still hidden. I do not say that they regress. Mental powers do not regress, but they stay behind a curtain. This is the period of age between 25 and 40. Another period comes after that when the body does not have the ability to grow, but the level it has reached is maintained. The condition of the ones above 40 is that of a liquid at a state after the initiation of boiling. The boiling has not settled, though it has stopped boiling. That is the condition of the ones above 40, that though the boiling has stopped, but its crest does not diminish. This is the period in which generally Allah raises prophets for the reformation of the public. This is the period in which powers have reached their peak, but the boiling is eliminated." Al-Fazl, 17th November 1943. To further highlight the notion that life begins at 40, we do not need to look any further than that of the life of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. From the commencement of Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's prophethood, he was not only a spiritual role model, but a physical role model as well. He endured physical hardships throughout his 40s. He took part in battles in his 50s, such that even until the age of 58, the Holy Prophet ﷺ was standing shoulder to shoulder with his companions, digging ditches. It shouldn't be that when we have the physical role model of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, that we, Safed-o Ansar, hesitate at the thought of Waqar Amal, stacking chairs, rolling carpets, cleaning pots. By the grace of Allah, this Ijtema has enabled Ansar to step into these jobs, and many have been doing so all year round. The point to highlight here is that we should continue to serve physically as long as Allah has granted us the physical strength to do so. Returning to the text of the sermon of Hazrat Muslim Maud Radhiyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, Huzur says, For running the affairs of this world, Allah the Exalted has created two forces. The reason for the creation of these two forces is that one force oversees the other. When one force is weakened, intentionally or unintentionally, the second force becomes prominent. Sometimes a child comes and hugs his mother. He is playing, and suddenly the love of his mother springs in his heart, and he thinks that he has not met his mother for a while. So he comes running while playing and puts the arms of love around the neck of his mother. Sometimes the child does not feel, but the mother feels. And suddenly she leaves chores and seeks her child here and there to find where the child is. And when she finds him, she pulls him to her chest. The same is the example in the spiritual world. Sometimes the love of the servant wells up in the heart of God, and sometimes the love of God wells up in the hearts of the servants. The love of God is called decree or taqdeer, and the love of man is known as action or tadbir. This chain runs and continues to run, sometimes from this side and sometimes from the other, sometimes by the force of decree and sometimes by the force of action, so that there is no slackness in God and human relationship. Huzur goes on to further explain this correlation of decree and action. Rulers oversee the population, and the people oversee the rulers. If any among the officials become unmindful or lazy, or an officer is appointed who is unfit for the office, there is a hue and cry among the public as to why the government is acting this way and not that way. When the people slacken, their rulers are there to hasten them. This way, both become a source of awakening and keeping each other conscious. In reality, this is a manifestation of decree and action which is seen in the world in this form. Keeping this point in mind, I had promoted the establishment of Khudam al-Ahmadiyya and Ansarullah. The reformation of the Jamaats is the duty of the Khalifa or deputies of the Khalifa, like the Nazirs, etc. A system was needed in the Jamaat to awaken the system, which would remove their negligence and would replace the people's negligence for the Jamaat. Thus, Khudam al-Ahmadiyya, Ansarullah, Lajna-e Maila are the beams of this system. They have been established to keep the system awake. When one will be careless, the other will be ready to awaken it. Whenever one will slacken, the other will come forward to activate it, as both represent one part each. One is a representative of the system, and the other is the representative of the public. If the responsibility of the reformation of the Jamaat wholly lies on the Nizarats, then the life of Jamaat Ahmadiyya can never be long. It is the law of nature that can never change, that one part will sleep and the other will be awake. One part will be negligent and the other will be alert. By making the world round, God has decreed that it is His law that one part sleeps and the other be awake. It is a fine arrangement of decree and action. Sometimes the public sleeps and the system is awake, and sometimes the system sleeps and the people are awake. However, sometimes both people and system are awake, and at that time is of great successes and achievements. When such periods visit a nation, when the system is awake and the public is also awake, it is a time of great victory for that nation. This is a period of success and progress for that nation. The nation roars like a lion and continues to advance like flooding. It erases every hurdle which comes in its way. It pulls down every building that falls in its way. It scatters everything which comes before it. This way, right before one's eyes, it continues to advance in this and that, in all four directions. It spreads in the world in such a way that no nation can stand in its way. Then a time comes when the system sleeps and the people are awake, or the people are asleep and the system is awake. Then eventually a time comes when the system goes to sleep and the people are also asleep. At that time, God's angel descends from the sky and takes away the spirit of that nation. Huzur says, this law is in operation for us too, and will stay in operation. It will never change. Therefore, keep this law in view. Our first attempt should be that our system stays awake and our people stay awake. Our current period, in fact, requires it. Al-Fazl, 17th November 1943. I, like some of you here, found this set of statements very profound. I had taken for granted the system we have in place and our role as members of Majlis Ansarullah. To now know that there is a fundamental purpose and reciprocating relationship between the Jamaat and the auxiliaries further strengthened my understanding of our Nizam. It is for these reasons that the Ansar annual program is full of activities in order to meet the obligations of the Majlis. In the same sermon, Huzur goes on to say, I envision that there is a great responsibility on Ansarullah. They are passing through the latter part of their lives. It is a period when man is worried to leave this world for the next one. When a person is going to the next world, he is particularly concerned about clearing his account. He is afraid in case he leaves this world while his account is in a jumble, his actions unseemly, and does not have provisions which may prove useful in the next world. Huzur then continues further on. After the period of Ansarullah is the period of the angel of death. The angel of death does not visit to reform. Rather, it comes to have a person presented for the punishment or reward he deserves. So I once again draw the attention of Ansarullah that they understand their duties. Al-Fazl, 17th November 1943. This brings me neatly to the subject of wasiyat in reference to Safed Daum Ansar. In short, Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salam wrote Al-Wasiyat in 1905. In this book, the Promised Messiah alayhi salam reiterates some of his claims. He foretells of death and destruction all over the world, and he gives glad tidings to his followers about future successes and claims. The Promised Messiah alayhi salam also elaborated on the two manifestations of Allah that are prophethood and khilafat. Hazrat Muslim Maud Razillah Ta'ala anhu further expounded on the system of wasiyat in his lecture Nizam-e-Naw in 1942. Huzur stated, history bears out that the Holy Prophet ﷺ fulfilled the needs of the poor from zakat and supplemented by voluntary subscriptions. The Khulafa Rashidin interpreted the Islamic injunctions according to the needs of their own times. But a different plan and system was needed considering the requirements of the present age. In order to establish such a system, it was essential that a man should be sent by God to alleviate all pain and suffering, and to present a system which should not be of earth but from the heaven, and to produce a blueprint for fulfilling the needs of the poor and alleviating the sufferings of the world. If an Islamic government has to provide food, clothing, shelter, medical relief, and to eradicate the ignorance by providing education for everyone, it must have at its disposal a lot more resources than would have sufficed in past times. The promised Messiah ﷺ therefore announced under divine command that Allah had ordained that today those who desire to win real paradise must volunteer to sacrifice 1/10 to 1/3 of their properties and belongings. Huzur continued, time will soon come when the world will cry out for a new order. From every quarter, voices shall be raised announcing a new order. Russia will claim to give the world a new order. India will put forward a new order. Germany and Italy will announce a new order. America will proclaim a new order. At that time, a successor of the promised Messiah ﷺ would announce from Qadian, the new order has already been set out in Al-Wasiyat. If the world desires to proceed along the path of peace and prosperity, the only way it is to put into effect the new order is laid out in Al-Wasiyat. Huzur says, the promised Messiah ﷺ goes on to say that the test of every believer is that he should take part in this scheme and should seek the special grace of Allah through it. Only hypocrites shall keep out of it. In other words, the scheme is not mandatory, but at the same time, he said that it is a test of your faith. If you are anxious to win the pleasure of Allah and to deserve the real paradise, you must make this sacrifice. If, on the other hand, these things have no value in your eyes and you can retain your properties in this world, neither Allah nor the movement founded under His command have any use for them. Hazrat Muslim Maud summarized by saying, in short, the foundation of the new order was not laid in Russia in 1910, nor will they be laid in the future or in Europe after the present war. As a matter of fact, the foundation of the new order, which is designed to bring comfort to the whole of the world and prosperity to every human being individually, and at the same time to safeguard the true faith, was laid down in 1905 in Qadian. Huzur said, the world needs no other new order. Extracts taken from Nizam-e-Nau, pages 110 to 134. In his concluding address on the third day of Jalsa Salana UK 2004, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih al-Khamis, Eid Tala bin Nasr al-Aziz, spoke about the importance of wasiyat and urged Ahmadis to fully take part in it. Huzur said, the people who join this institution should, according to the promised Messiah ﷺ, be such who desire a virtuous end and are regular in their worship. For this purpose, the best time is when one is young. Therefore, Khudam al-Ahmadiyya, Safed-Daum of Ansarullah, and Lajna-e-Ma'alla should try their best to take part in this divine scheme. Because when one reaches the age of 70 and above and is lingering on the edges of the grave, he has only leftovers to offer. So, for those of my Safi Dawm Ansar brothers who only recite the pledge a few times a year, I urge you to remember the motivation you felt when you were a khadim, reciting the pledge, and the sense of purpose that it gave you. Come forward and sacrifice your time once again. For those brothers that are still considering joining the institution of Wasiyat and becoming a Musi, I have no other way to express this but to simply say, you are now running out of time. May we always strive to win the pleasure of Allah, and may Allah give us the strength of conviction to meet the expectations of the beloved of Allah that resides amongst us. Ameen.